figured that's
Why
where you
are we
put it.
talking about this?
This worked, like the
One, that
sound.
has
Is it
nothing
on?
to do with
We're
me.
good?
Two, this is my mom.
Do you wanna switch? I guess it doesn't matter. We'll just sit in the same chairs.
Sure. Bad talking about my mom.
Oh, now I get to sit
saying,
like
saying all these not very kind things about mom and stuff.
one of the things I don't like
about
about facing is because so many people don't sit cross-legged.
I didn't want to.
So I'm
And you
like,
love to sit
I
cross-legged?
just, it's so
But at the
comfortable.
same time,
Really?
I feel
Yeah,
like
I used to hate it too. I used to
you're
like,
offending me.
well, that's what I
Everyone
get
looked
at
at me.
so
And we
very,
just go.
yes. I was like a huge tomboy growing up. So like,
trapped.
cut my hair short, wore
and
wore all my
I
rich
did
clothes,
this, still trapped. I felt
never wore
uncomfortable with the
makeup,
situation.
refused to wear
My boyfriend
dresses,
was
like my
with
mom
me
thought I was
too,
lesbian, like everything. She like
was
tried to
more
push
so
me out of the
able to
closet
get
is what I
me
call it when I was like 13.
So
She's
he has
like, you know,
like
sweetie, like
We just got
if
it
you
from
are,
my
like that's
phone.
okay,
And
like
he
your
told
stepdad
me
and I
after
still
he
love
said,
you and we'll accept you. And I was like,
I
Mom, I'm
felt
not
bad
gay.
for
And
that
she's like,
because
but
I
just in
like
case you're kind of questioning, like that's okay. I'm like,
You know,
Mom,
some of
I'm not, but okay. So that was really interesting. But
so I guess it
I think
kind
a lot of it has to do with
validated
growing up in a
mom's
family with a
feeling,
lot
and
of
I
really
was
strong
like,
women.
okay,
So-
you know, like
When I was younger, I didn't identify as a feminist,
But I just
and now
did.
like it's
I
like the running
absolutely
joke
did
with all my
not.
friends that I'm like a
They're like,
feminist in
oh,
the
we should
group,
do
and
this
like I'm a
again.
feminazi and blah
you
blah.
know, and I'm thinking,
And a lot of it is just
I wanna do
because
that
I
again and
see
put myself
kind
in
of
that
the
situation.
discrepancies in how men and women are treated,
You know, if
and
that topic wasn't
really
brought
big
up,
unfairness.
I'm
So it really
completely fine with it. You know,
pisses
very
me
nice
off
people,
when
very
men and women get
and
treated differently
I
in the
do
same situation.
actually get on very well with my
Or-
girlfriends,
and
so
especially
I'd
if
be
that's
totally
perceived
fine
as
with
being,
it.
like,
That
unfair.
topic is not.
So I think growing up kind of with like my
So
mom is
what I'm
like
hearing
one
is
of my
that
biggest idols, and she's like
other than
absolutely
this
wonderful
uncomfortable
person. We're like best friends
conversation,
because we don't live together.
really well.
So I live on my own.
But you thought it was
But that and then
inappropriate
like my
for her to
aunts
bring
are the
up
same
a previous
way,
conversation that
and
you had
the
no
like
part in.
male figures in my
Exactly
life
it.
have always been like the more
Yeah.
passive of the
I
parents.
just-
Like my dad and my stepdad are
And I
both.
tried to
I don't want to say
reason
submissive
and be like,
because I don't
well,
think that's the
maybe
right
she
word, but they're both
did just
really
bring it up because she felt uncomfortable or like I'm trying
they're
to
really
Laid back?
why
yeah
would
laid
she
back,
bring
really
that up? And
calm,
part of me is
really
just like
soft
she just
spoken.
wanted to
Mm.
start
So
something
they
and
have their
start
opinions and they express
conflict.
them, but
Well,
my
another
mom is
part
so
is
much
like,
louder
okay,
and so
well,
much
think
more
that,
adamant
you
about
know.
stuff that it's almost
So
like
it's
it gets
kind of
shadowed.
like-
So I think growing up in
I'm
that,
almost
I was
trying to
like,
reason
oh,
with
like,
myself
yeah, like, I don't
how
want to, you know,
to,
deal with, like, all these,
interpret
like, gender norms and
why
stuff,
she
so
would do
whatever, I'm gonna do what I want, so cut my hair short.
So you're trying to
Why didn't,
put
you said that you didn't
yourself in
identify
her
with being a
position
feminist.
and trying to
When I was a
figure out
kid,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
she would have brought this up.
which is really interesting.
And it makes
I remember
you
having a
confused.
conversation with my mom about it in
And
my first year at
upset
Douglas, actually, so
because-
5 years ago or something.
Whatever the reason
that
doesn't seem valid.
I was like, oh, but we don't need
No, it
feminism,
doesn't
like,
seem
men and
valid
women
at
are
all.
And my mom
Especially
just like looked
because
at me and
my
she's like,
aunt
did
was
that
there.
actually just come out of my daughter's mouth? And I was like, we are. And she's like, okay, like do some research and then like come back and talk to me about this. Like, how much money do women get paid
So
on
I'm
internet
not
stuff?
aware.
Like really basic stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, how many, like what is the proportion of catcalls for men to women? What's the proportion of, you know, like body eating or eating disorders men to women? Like,
And this was your mother posing all these questions?
yeah.
Wow.
And I'm
So-
like, I don't know. And she's like, so go look that up.
and
And then we'll talk about it.
So is
also
mom
at the same
a type
time,
of
anyway,
feminist?
Oh,
so
huge,
surprised at how my
huge.
aunt
And
was
she's never been
reacting. But
like when
also
I was younger,
thankful
she
for
was
how my
never,
aunt
she was
was
always
reacting. So I had all
really,
these
really
emotions.
careful with
So you had
how she
mixed
interacted
emotions,
with us.
you
Mm.
were
Because
counterparent for
she's a
hearing
sociology major.
conversations
Okay.
So she's very, very aware of
away from
socialization
con-
processes.
single
She
conflict.
graduated like top in her class.
You're upset
Absolutely
with
loves sociology. Still
your
reads like books on science
brothers,
today. Like
sisters,
loves it. So she was
sorry,
very
brothers,
careful about
girlfriends,
socializing us in any way.
a
So
mother,
Yeah.
we grew up
What
with
made
no
you feel
religion in the
uncomfortable?
household, but extreme religious
by
acceptance.
bringing up
So
a
like
conflict that you
my
weren't even
mom would
aware
always
of.
say like, oh, I don't like believe in
And this
religion,
was
but
your
I
first time
believe
meeting
there's
them.
something there,
Yes.
and you can believe in
Yes.
whatever you
So
Sure.
this
A bunch of
is-
different
this left you
religions
with
that
pretty bad
you explore
first
them, and if you
impression
find one
of
that fits for you, you can.
your
use that kind of
brother's
thing.
girlfriend.
So
and-
like that, also with like education, like whatever you want to do is fine as long as you're happy with who I want to be
Are
with.
you-
Like I don't care if you're with
Do you know if
a
your
girl, a
brother's
boy,
raised
someone in
religious
between. I don't care
at all?
what ethnicity they are. I don't care if they can't speak English.
Is that
Like none of that
part of the
So
matters.
reason
very,
why
very open to
this
Very
any
is
lifestyle.
open. And I think
I think
So when I was younger, even though I always saw her as a very strong parental figure, obviously, she was the one who like always worked more. She went to school and worked. She was always the one like doing all the grocery shopping. She didn't cook. My stepdad cooked, so doing all the grocery shopping, going to work every day, going to school every day, getting us ready for school. So she was really like the main figure, and she did everything for us, kind of thing, right? And obviously my stepdad was a big part of that as well. But I think that when I was younger, it was she was so cautious of socializing us to be, you know, like little girls running around. That she was just super open and tried not to like force any of her ideas on us. Obviously, it comes through
Naturally,
yeah,
you know.
because the way that you act, the way she
Nurturing.
interacts with my stepdad, the way she talks about people at work, but she would never explicitly like say that stuff. So when I was, you know, 17 or 18, my first semester at Deb, I was talking to her about that. She was like, no, like this is real time right now. Like we're having this conversation. Like I can't believe you just said that. So then I went and did the research and I was like, why do women get paid less? Like what is that? I was like,
Just totally cracked a new world.
just yeah, and I was just like really upset and really like this doesn't make any sense. And that like obviously it wasn't like an epiphany like all happened at once.
Sure.
It was like over the next like 2 years that I took a women's studies class. Actually I've taken a few now because I liked it so much. Or gender studies, you should call it. Study like just the socialization of both genders.
If I don't have to.
And I like started a feminism club on campus, and I was the president of a feminism club for a couple semesters. So we like built a club base and had some really awesome discussions and some pretty cool workshops.
Go again.
So you really kind of started to embody this.
Yeah, and it's really like I said, it's like who I am now. And looking at like my childhood with me like being like, no, I don't want to wear dresses, like I want to cut my hair short, like I can do anything a boy can do and I can do it better kind of thing, like I'm going to climb all the trees, like all of this stuff, right? It was really kind of almost like an embodiment of that feminist gender equal kind of mentality that I didn't really know I had. If that makes sense.
No, it does make sense.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's cool. I mean, like, and now, obviously, like, I wear dresses and skirts and still never wear makeup that drives me crazy. But, like, I'm, and I'll wear jewelry and stuff now. But it was kind of like, I feel like it's almost like the pendulum swinging. So, like, I started, like, no, like, I'm a feminist, like, when I was a kid, like, I don't care, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. Then it was like, okay, I'm a feminist, like, I have a label, and now it's like, I'm defining what a feminist is.
Interesting.
That does
make sense.
Yeah.
You just touching on your mother. You said that she was open in how you wanted to live your life, but she didn't, because she was so familiar with socialization. She didn't want to impact you in all those different ways and kind of I don't say impart wisdom, but she didn't want to really steer you towards anything specific. But did she also then lead a life, lead by example, I should say? Was she that woman as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I have kind of like an atypical family in that sense that my mom works full time and she's a federal parole officer, which is a very kind of masculine position. At least most people assume it is, but 90% of the office is female. Very interesting. I'm not sure if it's because their office deals primarily with male offenders, and typically male offenders respond better to female parole officers. So maybe if you had an office that was primarily dealing with female offenders, there would be male parole officers. I don't.
My mom and his
so she's a parole officer. My stepdad, him and my mom got married
for a fact.
in 2001, I think, and I love my stepdad. He's honestly like one of the best people in my life. He's a wonderful human being, and I'm super lucky to have him in my life. And a couple years after they got married, he got diagnosed with Usher syndrome, which is a degenerative disease of sensory organs. So he has tunnel vision, which means he sees like this, so he has absolutely no peripheral vision. And
you can actually see
he also has been like moderately deaf since he's been born. So yeah, so and it's a degenerative disease, so he will eventually go blind. So after we found that out, like I remember him driving, like when I was a kid, but he had to stop driving I think when I was like 8, like
It'll
he
allow
became
you to
legally
feel
blind then.
comfortable and
And
possibly
he had to stop
expressing
working
your
because he
feelings,
got
because
like workers' comp and you can't work while you're doing
You've
that.
seen that you want it to.
So my mom became the sole breadwinner of the house
Where I know that
while going to
that's
school.
something that I
So
have trouble
she's
with.
taking 5 courses a semester to finish her sociology degree so that she can just like, you know, get her education so she can get a better job so she can support us better. And my stepdad's stay-at-home dad. So it's opposite, which probably had a huge role in my upbringing, even though it was never like,
other situations.
there was never any that I can recall any time at all where they would even talk about like, oh, this is so funny, we're opposite, or like, oh, this is like, never any derogatory comments to each other about like, oh yeah, just go cook, or like, blah, blah, stuff like that. Like, it was, they had like a very loving relationship. But obviously I see like compare that to other kids in school and you're like everybody else has a dad who works. So sometimes the mom works too, but usually the mom's the one who's cooking, doing laundry, staying home when the kid's sick, and never was my mom that person. So
Interesting.
yeah,
That's great. It sounds like a good household.
So why couldn't you have gotten up and
So
went
going back to
outside?
kind of the beginnings and you kind of not defining yourself as a feminist and then kind of moving into this role of feminism. Do you think that your mother kind of helped usher that in?
Oh yeah, that's something
I think
Unconsciously, obviously, to her,
because
right?
that's what
wanted
she
to do.
intentionally but not intentionally. Never objectively, never explicitly,
Of course.
right? Implicit. I think it's her, but I also think it's my stepdad because my stepdad
It would be
is
rude
a very atypical
to
male.
get up
He doesn't get
go with your
jealous,
boyfriend.
like ever.
because
I
you
have
did
never.
something he does.
I've met one other guy in my life who
And
just
leave
doesn't.
your
He's like, I
mother
just don't
in
get
your
jealous,
hands
and I'm like,
in this awkward
I get jealous, and I'm a
position.
girl. And like
And
guys
guys
are
don't
supposed
say
to, like that's
My
like the
mom wasn't
stereotype. It's
there
like,
at all.
oh, guys get so
my
jealous,
mom
blah blah. So I'm like,
my mom doesn't.
okay, so that's weird. He's like doesn't get jealous. He's like a giant teddy
My
bear.
brother
He's like a big
doesn't
kid
really
inside.
talk
Like he
to
just
my
like wants to like
mom.
run around and play games all day and
So I
like
think
play
that
sports
might have
and
also
like do
been
all this
something
active
that was
stuff. So it's
kind
like
of in part because my brother
just
didn't
having
want
that
to
kind
say
of-
anything, he doesn't really
first of all the switch
get along
Yeah.
and
with
then
my mom
the
as well
atypical
as
kind of
I
roles
do.
that they both
Yeah.
took just in general.
So your mom
That
wasn't there and the
my stepdad
argument
was
was
very
between
like he took on more of like a feminine role in
Yeah.
terms of
So
what he did in the
she
house, but
was
also just his
making
personality. That he's
a
like, I'm not
reference to
jealous,
somebody
laid
who
back.
wasn't even-
Let's go
She's
play
like,
games, let's go
I
have
was
fun,
nervous
which is
to
like kind of what the
meet
mom would do.
you.
Yeah.
And then my mom being like, okay, just got home from work. Have you done your homework yet? Like very much more like business oriented almost. And they're both really nurturing and stuff. But I think that, and then also like my dad and my mom got divorced when I was like 3. Like I don't remember them ever being together. And I'm sure their divorce was terrible, but they have a very similar relationship now, which is great. So they never brought us into that. So my dad since then has only dated like very strong independent women as well. So whereas I live primarily with my mom and my stepdad, and my dad has always only ever spoke very highly of my stepdad and been is very grateful to my stepdad being there for us when my dad couldn't be. So it's really, there's like all of this just kind of like cohesion and this like kind of mixed family.
Yeah, very strong dynamic, it sounds like.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it sounds like from what you were saying that your mother is very, she's empowered you
Yeah.
in ways, and with your mother and your stepfather almost taking opposite roles,
Yeah.
they've kind of negated any labels in terms
Exactly.
of defining what a male should be and what a female should
Exactly.
be, and it just kind of,
Yeah, and I wonder if that's related to how I was when I was a kid. Where I was like, this, like,
Yeah,
I don't
like-
care, I'm doing this, I'm gonna wear,
it
whatever
wasn't
I
mom
wanna wear.
putting, hey, you need to
No.
be wearing dresses and stuff, it was
Yes.
just kind of,
Like,
Can-
hey Vlad, my older brother, can I borrow your pants today? And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, why? And I'm like, I want to wear mine. And he's like, okay, whatever. Like,
Just
can I wear your clothes?
yeah,
Like,
just,
sure.
and just very open, like you kind
Yeah.
of just, instead of looking at it as male and female, you kind of just, I'm a human being,
Exactly.
this is who I'm going to be.
Well, and like I live with my brother now. Like me and my brother are roommates. The one that I've got like this gigantic family. There's 9 kids. It's ridiculous. So me and my one brother room together, and we're the two that like grew up together like our whole life. And then I moved out. We didn't live together for about 2 years because I moved out of like my parents' home. And then he's like, oh, I want to move in. And I was like, move in with me. Like we'd be the best roommates ever. And it's super awesome. But he totally reinforces all of this because he's like, I'll come home and like he's like my go-to person. Like if something's bugging me, like I go straight to Vlad. Like we have like an amazing relationship. Loves that guy to death. And I'll just like sit on his bed and just like word vomit like all over him and be like, so this happened and this happened and I felt like this and I felt like that, blah blah. And then he'll like, you know, just like listen and then I'll say something that is not typical of me and is usually kind of embedded in some type of insecurity. And he'll be like, wait, like, did you just say that? And I'm like, dude, I just care myself. He's like, he's like, that's not you talking right now, is it? And I'm like, no, that's like, this like, whatever is going on, like, this anxiety or this like rumination or whatever's happening right now. And he's like, yeah, because you got this. And I'm like, right, I got this. Like,
So you kind of, you sit down with him, you'll vent a little.
Yeah.
You'll let everything out. But then you say that you kind of, there's something embedded that kind of opens up that you said it isn't really you, and even the second party would say that.
So it's almost like,
you can express.
I don't know, like home is where the heart is, right? Like I am completely 100% myself every time I'm at home with my family. I am never insecure about anything when I'm at home. I never worry about what I'm saying or what people are going to think about what I'm saying. I don't worry about like what my clothes looks like, what my hair looks like nothing.
It wasn't just the fact of the conversation.
And obviously when you go out, when you're, you know, in the public eye, you act different.
Yeah.
Sure.
Everyone has different, some people don't, but most people I think have different faces that they wear around people, right? So when I'm out, I'm a lot more concerned with how I look. And if I'm coming off as bitchy because I am very outgoing and I'm very, I want to say abrasive, but sometimes I feel like I could easily be perceived as abrasive because I'm like, this is my opinion. And this has nothing to do with you, like as a person, I'm not mad at you, but I am going to talk about this because I have very strong feelings about it, right? So it's, you do that and then you're like, oh fuck, like this person probably thinks I'm like a huge bitch and I'm just like totally like overpowering and like dominating this conversation when really it's just something I'm so excited about that I want to talk about it or I'm so passionate about it that I want to talk about it. Whereas when you're at home that doesn't matter, right? Because my family knows, they know that like I don't get mad at people. Like very rarely do I get mad or like angry with people. It's just like, no, I'm just really into this topic and I need to like express all this energy and all these thoughts.
Where do you think all that energy comes from?
It honestly, a lot of it will stem from
like, for instance,
either curiosity or unfairness. So those are kind of the two things. So if I'm really curious about something, like when I talk about like the research that I'm doing, I get like so excited, and that's a very productive conversation with people. Because then after that conversation, people are always like, seem like really excited about this. And I was like, I am. Like this is awesome. It's such a cool experience. But then when, for example, people say stuff like, oh, don't be such a pussy, like that's so gay, why are you acting like a fag? I'm just like, shut the front door, like why are you talking like that? Like, do you even know what those words mean? And it's not me getting mad as a person, it's not me saying that you're a bad person for saying those things. It's like,
you got 20 minutes too.
You need to understand where that's coming from. Like, you need to understand that that language is perpetuating a series of issues that are in our society, right?
So you in a way, you kind of feel like this defender. I feel like maybe because of what the family life was like and allowing you to determine who you are without labels, you've come to know and understand where these labels are unfairly coming from, and you kind of stand them out.
I've never thought of it as like defender before. I've always thought like, that's a very interesting way to put it, because it's often in that context where someone's saying, especially like, I guess like, don't be such a pussy isn't as common now, or people don't say it around me because they know I'm like, what did you just say? Darcy laughing at me. But like, that's so gay and don't be such a fag or whatever. I just like, I'm like, there is an entire group of people who are marginalized every single day, and all you're doing is perpetuating that marginalization. And you don't understand what they're going through. You don't understand what their life is about, but you feel like it's okay for you to use a word that identifies them to mean the same thing as stupid or lame or, you know, retarded or like all of those things. I'm just like, why would you choose to use that language when there's so many words in English that you could use that would better articulate your feelings? Anyways, no.
I can feel the energy already. It sets you ablaze.
So yeah, exactly.
So it's
That's
frustrating.
like, yeah, it's frustrating.
Because of a lack of intelligence, maybe, or just a lack of awareness.
It's
for a
just
lot of
awareness,
people.
right? Because I think that, like, I don't think intelligence has much to do with what you know as much as how you know it.
Fair, true.
So
Okay, so
like, when I go into class and the teacher's teaching me something, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm dumb because I don't know that.
Sure.
I'll be like, I haven't had the opportunity to learn that yet, right?
The
But I feel like,
So your approach is
Yeah.
typically to kind of just come over the top and just.
it's because I get so like emotional about it.
But it's because you seem just not to understand also why they're using the
Yeah.
language, right? There's this wanting to. Why are you saying the things that you're saying? Like, why are you being more respectful? Why don't you know the things that I know?
And part of that is, again, because of how I grew up. That I've
Mhm.
grown up in, my mom's always like, oh, don't use the R word. Like, you would never make fun of someone for being homosexual, so why would you use that word in a sentence like
Mm.
that, right? Like, you wouldn't go up to someone and be like, ha, like, you're gay, like, you're so dumb, like, I can't believe, because that's nothing that I've ever
No.
learned and nothing that I believe in. So
Yeah.
she's like, why would you use that word to mean the same thing? And so it's like, I guess like a much more constructive way to deal with that would be what I do with the 12-year-old boys I tutor. So I'm a tutor. I tutor 12-year-old twin boys. They're little shits, but they're sweethearts, and I love them. I've been tutoring them for a year and a half now.
Sure.
And they say, like, this is so gay when they're doing like long division or whatever. But they're 12 and they're kids, and I kind of have a soft spot for kids.
Sure.
So I'm like, oh, sweetie, like I didn't understand that math had a sexual orientation. Like that's really? Like, how do you know it's gay? And they're like, that's not what I meant. And I'm like, oh, but that's what you said. And I just act really sarcastic because
Yeah.
they're old enough to get
Sure.
that. But also trying to act really like I really don't know what you're saying right now. And trying to impress that doesn't mean anything when you
Yeah.
say that. Like, what it means is that, you know, you're oriented to someone of the same sex. That's
Mhm.
what the word gay means.
Almost trying to get them to engage with
Yeah.
you so you can explain it instead of like,
Just
no,
like,
don't
what are
say
you
that
doing?
exactly.
Yeah, which is what I think I do that with older people because I assume that they should have the knowledge.
Sure, because a lot of people will think that, hey, like I know everything, and if you kind of, no, don't say that, it's kind of like a fear for like, oh, like,
Well, and
maybe
even
she's
like
right.
the same thing, like if I go to someone and they're like, they say something like that, and I like, you know, go off, like that's not gonna work.
No.
That's not effective.
No, they'll
And-
want to do it more.
No, exactly. And it's the same thing with like giving advice and like
Mhm.
not taking it, like what Anne was talking about. So yeah, and I think a lot of that is just trying to like keep yourself in check and like being able to take kind of like the meta view and like looking at things from like a macro perspective and being like, okay, like is this even worth my energy right now? Like, is this person so incredibly ignorant in my view? Do I want to engage in this conversation with them? Is that worth my time? Is it going to get anywhere? Or like, okay, like I can take a second, calm myself down and actually have a constructive conversation with this person about their choice in language or about their beliefs, then we can actually just talk about differences in opinion.
Sure.
Because that might be all it is, right?
Yeah.
So
Interesting. So
Yeah.
it seems like you've got this obviously situation, and you've kind of been throwing in some strategies, and
Yeah.
you obviously know how to deal with the adults, the children you work
Mhm.
with, and different situations.
it's just like fine tuning, right?
It is,
So it's
it is.
like, okay, like I'm really upset this time. Like, what do I need to do? Do I just walk away? Do I, you know, ask if we can talk about something else?
Mm.
Like, how do I make it so that I'm not like, what the hell is wrong with you? Or like, more so, what the hell is wrong with our society that people talk this way?
And at least you're not kind of giving up like a lot of people would do, and like instead of just writing them off or just saying, oh, you're an idiot or blah, 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 you're actually educating. And
Trying to.
trying to, but
Yeah.
little bits help. It's better than that than ignoring the situation, so it's awesome. Anything else?
No, that's everything.
Yeah.
I like that defender thing. I never thought of that before. Oh my gosh, how long did you get?
23 minutes? Jesus.